Hello, welcome to my video on the quadratic formula, an alternative way to find solutions to quadratic equations without having to factorize first. If we are unable to factorize a quadratic equation, then we use the quadratic formula. You can always use it to solve quadratics, but it's usually simpler to factorize if you can. If you need help and practice factorizing and solving quadratic equations, then the link to my previous video is in the description below. To use the quadratic formula, your quadratic must be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b and c are numbers and a cannot be 0. The quadratic formula x equals minus b plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a gives us the two solutions to the quadratic equation when we substitute in the values of a, b and c. You'll need to grab a pen, some paper and a calculator as I guide you through 4 questions. 2 calculator and 2 non-calculator questions. Question 1 is a calculator question, and you know to use the quadratic formula because the question hasn't asked you to factorize the equation, and you have been asked to give your answers to 3 significant figures. As the quadratic equation is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you don't need to rearrange it in order to use the quadratic formula. We can see that a equals 2, b equals 4 and c equals minus 3. Substitute these values into the quadratic formula using your calculator to calculate 2 solutions. Be careful with your signs, and use the calculations on the board to check you are calculating your answers correctly. The solutions are x equals 0.581 and x equals minus 2.58, both correct to 3 significant figures. If you have time, it is a good idea to check your solutions satisfy the original quadratic equation. Substitute in each solution and ensure that the answer is very close to 0. You won't get exactly 0 as we have rounded our solutions. When you substitute in each solution, you should find that your answers are minus 8.78 times 10 to the power of minus 4 when x equals 0.581. And minus 7.2 times 10 to the power of minus 3 when x equals minus 2.58. As these numbers are very small and close to 0, our solutions are correct to 3 significant figures. Question 2 is another calculator question. Again, you know not to factorize the equation first as you are asked to give the solutions correct to 3 significant figures. You need to use the quadratic formula. As the equation is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you don't need to rearrange it. We can see that a equals 6, b equals 10 and c equals 3. Substitute these values into the quadratic formula using your calculator to get 2 solutions. Follow through the calculations on the board and use them to check that your answers are correct. The solutions are x equals minus 0.392 and x equals minus 1.27 rounded to 3 significant figures. Again, it is a good idea to check your solutions satisfy the original quadratic equation. When you substitute in each solution, you should get 1.984 times 10 to the power of minus 3 when x equals minus 0.392, and minus 0.0226 when x equals minus 1.27. As these numbers are very small and close to 0, our solutions are correct to 3 significant figures. The next 2 questions are non-calculator questions, where you have to give your answers in a different form. You know to use the quadratic formula here because the question asks for the exact value of the solutions. The equation is in the correct form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a equals 3, b equals minus 4 and c equals minus 1. The quadratic formula x equals minus b plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a gives us the 2 solutions to the equation. Let's start with the positive square root and substitute in the values for a, b and c. Under the square root we get minus 4 squared minus 4 times 3 times minus 1. This gives the root of 16 plus 12, which is the root of 28. As 28 is 4 times 7, this simplifies to 2 root 7. As b is minus 4 and a is 3, we get x equals 4 plus 2 root 7 all divided by 6. Dividing everything by 2 gives 2 plus root 7 all over 3. We cannot simplify the solution any further. The other solution is simply x equals 2 minus root 7 all over 3. It would not be a good idea to check our answers in this case by substituting either of these solutions back into the original quadratic equation. This would involve a complex calculation that would not be a good use of your time in an exam and hence, not good exam technique. Instead, for questions like this, double-check that you have calculated and simplified the solutions correctly. Question 4 is another non-calculator question. You know to use the quadratic formula for this question as you cannot factorize the quadratic equation and it asks for the answer in the form a plus or minus b times the root of c. The quadratic equation is in the correct form to use the quadratic formula. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a equals 1, b equals minus 2 and c equals minus 7. The quadratic formula x equals minus b plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, will give us the two solutions to the equation in the form asked for in the question. Under the square root we get minus 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 7. This gives the root of 4 plus 28, which is the root of 32. As 32 is 16 times 2, this simplifies to 4 times root 2. As b is minus 2 and a is 1, we get x equals 2 plus or minus 4 root 2 all over 2. Dividing everything by 2 gives x equals 1 plus or minus 2 root 2, the answer in the form asked for in the question. As your answer is in the correct form, and substituting the solutions back into the quadratic equation to check them would be too time-consuming, for this question just double-check your calculations to check your solutions are correct. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you can now solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula and know when to use it. If you have found the content useful then please consider subscribing to my channel.